audio. Okay. Hello, anybody who's already here. I'm not going to say I'm going to try to keep this short anymore because that never actually happens. But if that did happen, it would be intentional because not that much necessarily changed between last time and this time. Why is it not registering that the laptop's plugged in? Wiggle the power cord around. There we go. Oh, and actually, speaking of that, the new laptop is successfully ordered. The expectation with everything was that it was going to be over $1,000, and it would have been if not for catching HP on their their pre-Memorial Day discount binge, and also the fact that I consulted Josh beforehand, and he assured me that despite the fact that it's been 10 years since 16 gigs of RAM was insisted, uh, I can my assumption that I must need 32 now on from now on going forward. He insisted that that is not actually true, and unless I'm running some stupid AI algorithm on my laptop or I'm a pro gamer, I'll be just fine with 16. So set it, I ordered it with 16 RAM instead of 32, which saved like $200. So managed to end up only having to spend 800, and that should be arriving first or second week of June. Just managing to avoid not only these potential supply disruptions later, but the ones that are already happening because the on-site bare helium reserves that a lot of the different processor manufacturers in different locales around the world had on hand, whereas there's Malaysia and Singapore and India. Uh, they're reaching the end of those, so what's available on the market is about to become all that's available, which will be thankfully not a third less than normal, uh, but only like probably 20% less than normal for the time being, as Algeria was able to jump up some helium extraction capacity. Russia had a bit more. The US had a bit more it could turn on. So there is some compensation. And also, there are helium alone, not helium that's accompanied inside of natural gas, but just helium deposits alone throughout. There's three throughout the US and Canada that are coming online over the next number of months, that each are going to be like 4 or 5 million cubic meters per year or so. But the that breakdown was starting to already appear in some of the choices available since it's basically they're only going to be able to make X number of they're usually they make the big wafers, they're like a meter wide, and then on the wafer you have draw my best to grid it out here. You'll have hundreds or thousands of individual little pieces, etched pieces that will then become individual processors once they're put in the casing and everything. So now the total amount of wafers and thus individual pieces getting made uh, is shrinking. So they're starting. The different manufacturers are starting to pick and choose which processors, which types of things to continue having available on shop versus which ones not to. Stuff they'll be making decisions based on what sells the most, obviously, And in some cases, they are just sort of cutting an equal measure of each down, but also raising the price by said equal percentage amount to compensate. But anyways, so the laptop is coming, and as you can see in the thumbnail, that was a recent photograph I took, or a zoomed in portion of it while me and Josh were out at the store earlier today. The price has not really changed over the last week. The whole, draining the strategic petroleum reserve, something that Trump especially complained about Biden doing and about Obama doing it before him, skipping over the fact that he also did such during his first term. But hey, uh, after complaining about doing such, we are now burning through it at a rapid rate because he wants to make sure the prices stay suppressed so that his approval rating does not drop below 20%. It's getting down close to 20%, despite him trying to also hide the approval rating by threatening to have the media licenses of various like news agencies revoked if they continue publishing his approval rating. But the attempts to do that keep getting struck down in court because obviously they would. And only one of the big ones just kind of complied on their own and took the threat at face value and didn't challenge it. But the rest of them did challenge it, and obviously it's not holding up. So the approval rating is still visible, and he doesn't want to go any lower. So we are emptying out, like pouring out a whole bucket of water on the lawn, the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, so that that price gets to stay suppressed and not go too high, which you guys remember from the past when you do this. Oops, let me X this off. When you do this, like with silver, if you don't allow this to happen with a price when it should be happening and it stays low, whether because in silver's case, the market is being stupid, or in this case, because it's being artificially suppressed, you end up eventually getting to a point where it does this instead, which is what happened with silver. And if we continue artificially suppressing the price of oil and gasoline, at least on the US consumer side, that's what's going to end up happening. Oh, this can only end badly. But anyways, speaking of ending, things are gradually inching closer to each other. So I have the whole stuff properly written down this time. So from the US's side, the starting positions that have been whittled down since then were initially no nuclear anything at all, uh, no no like regular missiles or anything. Which again, that was Israel asking us to put that in there, and no one was ever going to agree to that. And no more proxy groups. Those are the three primary things. The no more regular missiles thing, we let go of that, and Israel has been very angry at us for letting go of that, and has been, funneling that APAC money, to, try to get some of the more super super pro Netanyahu, pro like crush Iran, Greater Israel guys in U.S. Congress, like Lindsey Graham, for example, to like try to advocate for putting that back on the board. But so far, they're not actually able to get that many people in favor of it. Uh, but we did drop that one. The no nuclear anything was changed to just no nuclear weapons, so no nukes. And initially, was also a no nuclear anything for 15 years, which was then switched down to 5 years. And from Iran's side, they rejected that wholesale initially, but then agreed to the no nukes thing, at least on paper. They're going to make them anyways, but they agreed to that at like tacit face value for the sake of getting closer to an agreement. And they reject the 5 years thing, but they said they, as of the moment, they're up to being willing to do 2 years. And the US will probably in the next week or two just drop down to agreeing to the 2 years thing. The proxy part has not been spoken of for over a month. And my assumptive theory is that we're both just neither going to speak of it again and pretend that was never a part of anything and just let that be forgotten or at least pretend it's forgotten. So that part, by omission, by ignoring that it once existed, is effectively has now been let go. From Iran's end, they initially asserted like full control of the strait. It belongs to Iran, which no one was going to actually agree to, and they have dialed that one back. They were the other things. Oh, I have a paper right next to me with everything listed on it. Why am I not looking at the paper? They want all of their frozen money back, which we are inching towards that. Initially, the US said no, but has now moved a bit closer and has agreed to give them back 30 billion at the moment out of I think it's roughly 300 billion. Not all of it is in like the US itself, but I think technically most of it technically we have some kind of control over and could have it sent back to them. But the US is up to agreeing to give them back 30 billion of it. And Iran obviously wants all the sanctions gone, which which the US initially said maybe and now had started saying yes, but if you stop the whole insistence that the strait like belongs to Iran thing, and now as of this morning, Iran backed off of that and said that they'll be okay with just all the sanctions getting removed and uh, won't won't do the controlled passage toll thing. Uh, but they want to set up joint a joint like union board thing with Oman to have like agreed terms of countries that are or are not allowed to come and go. But they know no one in the end is really going to agree to really going to agree to that, so they've been gradually backing off that one. But the whole process is going at a pace of like inches. So this is working further and further towards the the two outcomes that I said are now likely. The first, in which there's an agreement, is that eventually both inch towards something in the middle and then both proceed to claim victory. The US already moved towards that. Pete Hegseth, the neo-Nazi nipple guy, had already did a 180, complete 180 after a month and a half of saying that nothing's done yet, and we're coming back later to finish the job. He started doing a 180 about 2 weeks ago and saying that actually the mission is complete and everything that was done were actually the original objectives all along. This was actually what we set out for to begin with. So the whole claiming victory groundwork has already started being put down. So that's the main likelihood. The other likelihood's way of having the situation resolved is as the coalition of other nations stepping up with potential naval insertions grows, eventually you could come to a point within a couple months where outside non-US nations start inserting their naval vessels in and around the strait for a protection measure against transiting oil tankers and other ships. And while they're there, because Iran would most likely hold back initially, because that would then mean starting stuff with somebody else, which they really want and need to keep the framing that this is all on the US and that their antagonism is only towards the US. Uh, while said nations begin a presence there, a third party presence, in this scenario, while they're there, the US then kind of quietly, but not really because it's the modern day, sort of just leaves and does the whole never speaking about this again thing and just pretends nothing ever happened. And then the situation gradually renormalizes around the strait because then the US blockade and the US attack force is no longer there, which is the whole reason that Iran is holding anything up. The first option is like looking more likely. I call it like between the two, it's probably like a 70-30 split. But there are also more bypasses and diversions developing, as that was effectively inevitable. And as I said last time, that's part of why Iran went so hard in on this time, is because since they've been the more intelligent party in this whole endeavor, they almost certainly have the IQ points to foresee that basically everybody, no matter how much it hurts some of them, like Kuwait or Qatar, have to like double piggyback or triple piggyback. Uh, everybody is going to just start bypassing the strait from now on. They can't, and also the world at large is going to shift their helium dependency supplies. The various oil major companies are going all in on that large shale basin in northern Australia. Uh, it's about the same size and has the same potential output as like the Appalachia shales in the U.S. And development is like rapidly being development capital is being rapidly poured into various projects elsewhere. Iran most likely had the IQ points and the foresight to realize that this would be kind of a one-time deal, and after after doing this once, they would never, even if the situation repeated, they would never actually be able to do it while having this much leverage again. So that's why they've locked in on it so hard this time. Even though even though they could not like be full lockdown on everything and kind of just could wait stuff out, normally even under bombardment, but they know that basically because of how everything's going to redistribute in a knee-jerk reaction to this, they know this is like a one-time chance, so they jumped on it. All right, I think that's the extent of the initial stuff. Now, time to talk about the pipelines. After I get my water bottle, which is over here. So there's additional pipeline stuff, and then since nothing else new really happened, I was just going to go down some general oil and gas developments and different numbers and stuff that are set to happen over the next few years and later this year, especially in Brazil. There was a lot more coming online in Brazil than I initially thought there was. And then we'll quickly go through some of the additional demand destruction stuff while also just uh, doing a broader map out for the sake of everyone to get an overarching idea, since in the oil demand monthly update videos, it's only, usually the same 40 or 50 countries because those are the ones who actually publish data regularly. There is a rough idea of most countries' oil demand levels at present because you can track imports and stuff and how frequently they happen, what everyone's production levels are. And some countries also do publish their demand numbers and stuff, just only like, say, every 3 months. And then sometimes they'll publish it like 5 months later after that. One such country is like South Africa. You guys are horrifically inconsistent with data provision, although you do provide it eventually. So, uh, for once, I was going to go through like most countries that we have known numbers for, and just let you guys get uh, a numbers down on the map visual of that uh, once, and this only once until I eventually do it again sometime in the future, along with also how much they've decreased in response to the current situation. Don't need that up anymore. Is anybody alive? One person. Multiple people here, but only one living person. Everyone else is a zombie. And Josh is not uh, in chat because he is streaming right now. He is, if you go to Twitch, he's Green JL. You can go to his Twitch. He has his cat Sophie as his profile pic. He's a pro Overwatch player or whatever, so he's over there doing that. Okay, so existing pipelines to cover one more time real quickly. There's the Saudi pipeline, which has a pumping capacity of 7 million barrels per day. The actual terminal that it pumps to is able to export and is currently exporting 5 million. The other 2 million is being used by Saudi Arabia, or technically more than 2 million. They're just doing a lot of their refining on the West Coast now for safety. So they are in the final planning stages for an additional pipeline plus expansion or slash expansion, as they're also going to be getting Kuwait opted to choose Saudi Arabia out of the three options it had. So Kuwait's going to have a pipeline go down and connect to Saudi Arabia. So Saudi Arabia is also now about to start laying the foundations and stuff and doing work to expand the export capacity at their Red Sea terminal so that when those pipelines are done, they'll be able to actually get the oil out, both theirs and Kuwait's. But that is going to take a couple years. That is more like a uh, late 2028, maybe 2029 thing. Stuff that's, or sorry, other stuff that already exists is the UAE pipeline to Fujairah, which is up to its maximum capacity of 1.8 million barrels per day. And the port at Fujairah apparently actually can export up to 2.5, and they were already considering expanding it. Like they already had plans laying around, and so the government just rubber stamped that like last week and signed the check to the companies to start that. The expanded capacity at the terminal will take uh, at least 2 years, but they could do it in two if they're speed running it. The pipeline, which they actually already had stuff on hand for, apparently, like they already had sections ready, because I wasn't aware this was in the works, but apparently they were already like considering doing this as a further contingency. They actually, well, yeah, ever since the 12-day war last year, they probably decided then that they should actually like start ordering stuff and getting on that. But they are now starting the actual construction work, as in the sections are being welded together and everything, and it's going to be connected into the one that already exists. That is under construction, and it will be finished in either early next year or middle of next year. So early 2027 or towards the middle of 2027. And that will initially get another 700,000 barrels per day of diversion capacity onto the 1.8 that already exists. So they'll be able to max out Fujairah's 2.5 million barrel per day export capacity. And up here, we have the two different Iraq pipeline sections that go up into and through Turkey. The one that already exists is pumping at the moment between 300 and 400,000 barrels per day from the Kurdish portion up over into Turkey. Iraq is working on repairing the sections of this portion that were damaged back during the ISIS stuff in the mid and late 2010s. And that should be repaired in 2 months or so, sometime in July. And that will be able to go up to about a million. So that will then be another million that's able to get diverted elsewhere. And they are working on the reconstruction of a pipeline through Syria that used to exist that took damage throughout multiple decades across multiple conflicts. That one, similar to the UAE, uh, similar to the new UAE one, is not going to be ready until early next year or mid next year. That one will be able to take, at the start at least, 700,000 barrels a day away out through this port in Syria. And Syria is going to start soon. They're looking for who wants to take the expansion contract for the actual oil terminal itself. Uh, they're going to expand the terminal, obviously, to enable further capacity through that pipeline in the future. But again, the expanding the oil export terminal portion, that is a bit slower than the pipeline. That's going to take a couple of years. And the Kuwait down to Saudi Arabia pipeline, that if they start it soon, could be done within like a year and a half, kind of like the new UAE pipeline. But the additional Saudi portion, once they start that, that's going to be closer to 2 years just because it's bigger and longer. But also, I mean, getting oil through that would still have to wait for Yanbu to have increased export capacity anyways. And the Iraqi pipeline through Jordan to the port of Aqaba, that one is on similar timeline to like the terminal expansions. That one's more like a 3 year thing from when they start that, because going up through different portions of Jordan and the different sudden elevation changes is a little bit more difficult. It's not some like impossible Herculean task like a bunch of doomers on Twitter were constantly making it sound like just to remind people, back up home in Alaska where I used to live before my exile began, as a aftermath of 2020 happening. We have all this oil production up on the north slope of Alaska that goes through a pipeline that goes up through the mountains and then down and then up through the mountains again. Multiple sets of 4 mile tall mountains up and down, up and down, up and down. It's not, I don't know why people think this is like quote unquote impossible. Like that pipeline was thrown together in the 70s and it didn't take that long to build. So, which is also kind of why the U.S. collectively slash the West Coast has no real excuse for having having the extra fuel expense of requiring things to be refined out here and shipped by boat down through the canal and come up around here, or sent from Alaska down here. Like there's pipelines and everything for sending both crude and refined products all over the U.S. However, there's like I think there's only one pipeline that goes like actually to the West Coast. I forgot where it was, but it's really low capacity, and you know they keep people again the same people on Twitter said like there's a reason there's no pipelines to the West Coast. No, actually, they're the actual reason is just because no one wanted to pay for it before, but there would be no difficulty with making it. Like we did the Alaska stuff over much harsher mountains and heights and much greater distances. I mean, we finished. I now remember actually speaking about this years ago, a few years ago on one of the first like radio streams. We just finished a pipeline going up through like the Mexican portion of the Rockies slash Cascades slash Andes out over to here. This one is a natural gas pipeline so that LNG can be exported uh, out through here and sent over to Asia to cut down on the amount of traffic the Panama Canal has to deal with. So, we kind of just did do massive pipeline infrastructure through the mountains over to the west, just not the American West yet, at least. I'm hoping someone will be intelligent enough to realize, hey, maybe we should just do it. Okay, that's the extent of the pipeline stuff, or at least all the developments up to this point. Anybody else alive? All right, we got one other living person. Now we're up to 11 people total. If you missed anything, you can scroll back along the timeline. I've already been going for 30 minutes. There's no way I've been going for that long, but oh well. Okay, so to rapid fire through some other stuff before we get into the general overview things. So US gasoline price and other prices are continuing to be suppressed via releases from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve and other inventories. So Strategic Petroleum Reserve was actually being refilled very gradually. It was up to about 420 million barrels in storage until we had to start drawing it down, or technically we didn't have to, but we're doing it anyways. Now it's down to under 380, around probably 375. And keep in mind that only started going down about a week or two into April because there were still tankers coming in before that. But it's going down slower than people initially thought it was because the U.S. doesn't rely on tanker imports from the Middle East for all of its the gap between its production and consumption. The U.S. jumped back up to 13.7 from it was down to about 13.55 after peaking at I think it was 13.83. Jumped back up just over 13.7 from the Pika project up home in Alaska activating at 80,000 barrels a day, and a project in the Gulf that I did not know had a second portion, but apparently it has a second portion, and that activated, adding an additional, I believe it was 70 or it might have been 60,000 barrels per day. Stuff up north, back up home, and stuff on the seafloor all activates at once. It's not like shale or like regular onshore oil patches where like a well gets drilled and that starts flowing and you can just drill more wells one by one and just temporarily do like a quick shut off while you connect this additional like small pipeline into that. You can't really do it like that up in the Arctic, and also not down on the ocean floor. Uh, you can't really work in that fashion. So down on the ocean floor or back up home, basically you set up all of the well boxes, whether on the Arctic surface or down on the seafloor. You set up all of the well boxes, usually 6 or 8, and those all tie back in like this to, I believe it's just called a riser. They tie back over here to like the big pipeline up to the floating equipment on the surface. And once everything is connected, then the valves are remotely opened and everything begins to flow at once. So that's why you see whenever offshore stuff anywhere in the world activates, that's why offshore fields always come online like this, instead of uh, going still steeply but at a gradual climb, like a lot of onshore stuff tends to do. But the US is back up for the moment to 13.7. Consumption levels, in the US average on present day, still around 20. We're actually a bit closer to 21 before everything started. I think we were at 20.7 just before the war. We are down to 19.5 as of most recently. The biggest chunk of that drop was gasoline demand, which dropped from 9.3 million barrels a day. Almost 10% of the world's oil demand is specifically in the form of U.S. gasoline consumption. U.S. gasoline consumption dropped from 9.3 down to 8.5 in the last 2.5 months. Whereas normally, as you get closer to summer and then into summer, it actually goes up. That's when it would be like, in our case, it would have been going closer to 10 this year, apparently. But, anyways, so Canada's consumption has dropped a bit too. So we are at a full solid 3 coming down like from Canada. So that, gets you 16.7. We got roughly a million coming up from Venezuela. That puts you at 17.7. An assorted amount coming from mixed shipments from Colombia, Ecuador, and Guyana. That gets you like up to 18.7. And then some from Brazil, which gets you a bit above 19, which gets you close enough. At least that's on average. So, why are we still releasing stuff from the Strategic Petroleum Reserve, you ask then, if it doesn't look like we really need to release that much? Well, that is, so there's excess, which we do export some of to specific countries that we need to make sure, no matter what, stay online, like Japan. But the big part of it is because Donny Boy wants to keep the price suppressed. Let's see. Japan's Strategic Petroleum Reserve was at the start of things at, I think, 262 million barrels, and they are down as of today to 205 million barrels. China started, they're the only other one I know off the top of my head. China started at like 1 point, oops, no. 1.34 or 5, I think. And they're down to just over or just under 1.2 billion. So those are where those stand as of the moment. Worldwide, aviation or flights in general, from passenger flights to cargo flights to business flights, everything uh, is now declining, not just from pre-war numbers, but just against last year for comparison, for example. So every year it was climbing after the COVID recovery because you had like most flights in the summer. You had 2019, and then 2020 was like way down. Then 2021, sorry, we draw that one over here, was like kind of halfway back up. 2022 basically matched 2019. And then every year after that, it started going back up again. The actual jet fuel demand took a little bit to actually start like climbing over pre-COVID levels because during those years, also more and more older planes were still getting replaced with newer, less fuel consumptive ones. But last year, it hit and just barely exceeded the pre-COVID jet fuel global consumption levels. Whereas pre-COVID in 2019, it was, I think, just under 8 million barrels per day of jet fuel demand. Last year in 2025, it was instead of just under, it was just over 8 million barrels per day of jet fuel demand. And it looked like this year it would have climbed up slightly based on the initial numbers to average about 8.2 across the year. However, as airlines have begun cutting flights, some airlines, such as Spirit, have ceased to exist. It Aviation overall, the number of flights has now dropped below what the number was this time last year, and is now at minus 3% from the last year numbers. And in total, is the number of flights right now is minus 5% from where they otherwise would be, because again, up until we got into March and the effects of the war started to become obvious, uh, global global aviation, the number of flights, commercial cargo, everything had been roughly 2 or 2.5% higher than last year. So you have to factor that in on top of the fact that the number at the moment over the last few weeks has been 3% below what last year was. So in total, roughly 5% down from where it probably would have been, the total count of like aircraft in the sky day to day. Let's see. Uh, extra, extra, what? Compensatory slash extra supply news. Uh, Venezuela, as I already said a few other times, it looks like Chevron and the others are going to be able to restore Venezuela's production quicker than they thought. After it crashed down to 800 from 1.1 during January, during the stuff that happened, the little kidnapping incident. And then it was quickly brought back up to 1.1 by March, and now apparently over the course of April, we managed to get it up already to 1.23. Guyana this year, sometime in the next few months, because they're a bit ahead of schedule on it, we'll be adding another 250,000 barrels per day of production from their next new field, or another 0.25 million barrels per day. Brazil, over the remaining course of this year, is going to be adding, hold on, where is Brazil? Is going to be adding another 400,000 plus barrels per day. There is a chain of three things. I thought there was only one more coming online. There's actually a chain of three. So looks like by the end of the year, In terms of total ceiling, Brazil is going to be up to like 4.6. Although there's always one or two things down for maintenance, so they'll probably be more like 4.5 or something. But Brazil is jumping faster than initially expected because some things got moved up in schedule. Argentina is going to still be going up by another 100,000 this year to hit a million by the end of the year. After that is when it looks like they're going to taper off. They're still going to be going up. The speed is just going to slow down. Libya has uh, bounced back up by another several tens of thousands up to, at the start of this month, 1.43. And the stuff they have being restored at the moment that will come online before the end of the year should get them up by another 170, 180, just enough to go back above their pre-Civil War 1.6. And it looks like they will actually be able to get close to 2 million over the course of next year, which is faster than initially expected at the beginning. Nigeria had more successful restoration of lost production because of all the different damage from different angles they've taken. They had, fallen as low as 1.1 because of destroyed infrastructure, unmaintained infrastructure because the government members keep redirecting the funds back into their own bank accounts, and damage from terrorist attacks and stuff. They'd gone from over two all the way down to one over the course of a decade. And they had, as of recently, restored back up to roughly 1.5. Apparently, now over the last few weeks, they've restored a decent bit more for another 100,000 barrel per day jump. And now they're back further up from 1.5 to 1.6 million barrels per day. Was they were they the only ones left for this year? No. Okay, forgot about Oman. Oman will also be able to crank up most likely an additional 150,000 barrels per day over the course of this year as they get towards their ceiling, and then not a production increase, just a availability increase once that pipeline section is done in Iraq in summer. Then an additional million barrels per day will be able to then start getting out to the outside world at large again, as it will be able to take a diversionary path. Okay, then keep in mind this is what I know of. I Oh yeah, and looks like by the end of this year or early next year, the expectations are we can probably get Venezuela back up to 1.6, and then a few 100,000 barrel per day per year after that, at least initially. But what else? What was I doing? Oh yeah. So then next year, 2027, these are the ones I know of. There is another field next year coming online in Guyana that will go up by yet another 250,000 barrels per day. Net gain will be less than that, obviously, because the first field and soon the second field will be in decline in the background. Obviously, a couple 100,000 barrels per day next year up from Venezuela as well. Brazil next year is going to be adding another 340,000 barrels per day. Argentina will probably next year be able to punch up another maybe 80,000 barrels per day, past a million. They're going to be slowing down. It's not going to be 140 per year anymore. Mexico has a plus 180,000 barrel per day field coming online next year. And then in 2028, they have a plus 60 field coming online. Let's see. And in 2028, also, Suriname comes online with their first field at 220,000 barrels per day of initial startup. Excuse me, clear out. Thank you. And then in 2028 as well, Brazil adds, finally takes a break, kind of, and only adds another 125,000 barrels per day, putting themselves at that point probably at or over 5 million. 2028, what else was there? 2028. Uh, I do not recall. Oh, well, further stuff in Iraq was going to be ready, but it's going to depend on the situation at that point. And then 2029, the first stuff from Namibia starts coming out at around 200K. And then in 2030, I think the second field comes online, which will then take them up to 400K. And 2032, the third field comes online, which will take them up over 800K. What else do we have in 2029? The only other things I have down for, oh, well, also in 2028, I forgot. I forgot to write it down. In 2028, there's also yet another 250,000 barrel per day field coming online offshore of Guyana. Uh, but in 2029, on the US end of the Gulf of Mexico, there is a plus 80 field coming. And then in 2030, there is also another plus 80 field coming as well. And somewhere along that various time frame, there's a handful of different 20, 15, and 40,000 barrel per day fields back up home on the North Slope. And then Smith Bay comes online. At the moment, it looks like 2030, maybe 2031, and that will be initially at least a 250,000 barrel per day boost. And Canada will continue gradually climbing over the time frame as well. I just don't. There's no particularly set schedule of expectations for them, so don't ask for one. Okay, so now for the final thing, the part I said I was going to do that's probably also going to take a long time. We're going to run through some demand destruction included on some of them, but in general, we're going to run through, since I've never done it before, the whole world's country by country for countries that reliable data was available from in some form. Uh, countries' oil consumption numbers. And to plug myself as always, and we got nobody else. Okay. Anyways, yeah, over here, if you want to see graphs of the different countries' oil, shut up, oil demand levels over time, go down to the description under the stream or under any video I've made in the last like 2 years. Go under the PayPal and Patreon links. There's a free access drive. Go here. This is free access stuff for anybody who's new. I maintain all these different graphs across all kinds of things from like mine output levels of different metals across the world, electricity demand levels, CO2 emissions levels, coal use levels, economic data, oil data, in this case, specifically oil demand graphs. And I have graphs from 1970 up to present day, with like monthly or bi-monthly fluctuations shown for most countries who consume around 200,000 barrels per day or more. I'll keep going below that. I'll try to get everybody eventually, but That's going to take a while. For example, like here's Algeria's domestic consumption levels. They just hit about a million, or sorry, half a million. So they are up to now eating about half of their own oil output. But anyways, so you can see those over time graphs there and all kinds of other stuff if you want to. Oh, there's Josh. I guess he finished streaming. But okay, to go through everybody, the U.S. averages in present day usually 20 million barrels per day. Was at 20.7 before the Iran war started. Now, all the way into the effects of it, has dropped to about 19.5. And obviously, it usually does fluctuate by a few 100,000 barrels per day, every week. So you can shave a bit off the top. Instead of 1.2, you can just make a broad assumption of a rough 1 million barrels per day of demand destruction on the US's end. Uh, Next largest consumer is China, who was up to about 17 pre-war, and just before it started, their most recent levels had actually been very close to exactly 17. Most recently, they were down at 15.8. Again, round down for safety and assume that's about exactly a 1 million barrel per day demand destruction on their end. Next is India, who in present day is up to averaging just over 6. They just recently had hit 6.04 pre-war. Now they've dropped from that only a little bit, down to 5.85, which might just be fluctuation. It might not even be demand destruction yet, as the Indian government isn't just doing Trump price suppression stuff in the moment. They subsidize fuel prices and everything to begin with as just regular policy. So I have no idea what percentage of that, uh, you know, whole 200,000 barrel per day drop is actual demand destruction or not. Japan is usually roughly around 3.5 million barrels per day in present day. Pre-war, they were around 3.4, I believe, might have been 3.3, and they're most recently right around 2.5. So technically, you could argue that's 800 or 900,000 drop, although they do in fluctuations under normal circumstances sometimes go down to like 3.2. So it's probably more like, say, 700 or 600. And then let's see, after them is Russia, who has been fluctuating across different circumstances because there was the economic stuff after 2014. Then they went back up. Then there was COVID. Then they went back up, and then they invaded Ukraine. And since then, their domestic oil consumption has kind of been wobbly all around. But pre-Iran war, they were at 3.2. As of most recently, a few weeks ago, they were down to about a flat 3. On their end, domestic fuel prices are partially subsidized. So I don't know how much of that 200,000 drop was actual demand destruction. South Korea in present day is normally around 2.8 million barrels per day. And it looks like most recently they had come in down at about either 2.4 or 2.5, but they fluctuate up and down like everybody else does from week to week. So they sometimes fluctuate normally as low as 2.6. So safety assumption is probably only 200,000 barrels per day of direct destruction, maybe, but don't know for certain. Saudi Arabia fluctuates across the year from 2 to 3, lowest in winter, highest in summer, as they still generate less than a third, but close to a third of their electricity from oil-fired power generation. So their oil demand goes way up in the summer. They had dropped below 2 post-war, starting down to 1.8, and did start climbing as we get through the hotter and hotter parts of the year, but are still down from where they otherwise would be because of less other use, like vehicle fuel, gasoline, etc. Obviously, jet fuel, especially. So most recently, back in last month, they were only at like 2.2 when they otherwise, by end of April, early May, usually they would be up at 2.4 or 2.5 already, and then they get up to 3 at the height of summer. Let's see, Canada is usually around 2.5, roughly. They pre-war were their most recent number had been 2.45. Now they're down a bit, down to 2.2. So a couple 100,000 barrels per day of reduced demand, most likely reduced gasoline consumption. Who else? There, Brazil is the other 2.5 person. Brazil is usually at about 2.5 in present day, and they have not given any recent numbers since like January or February. So no idea what they're at the moment. Indonesia is one of the harder hit ones, like the Philippines and like a lot of other Southeast Asian countries. So they've instituted mandatory fuel use reductions by the public, and also have been making any businesses that are able to do so switch over to work from home, or switch over to like only 4-day work weeks, or like having their employees like carpool together all in one ride. They are normally in present day up to roughly around 2.2, and pre-war they had been at 2.1, I believe was their most recent number. However, now they're down at 1.7 because of everything. Germany, Deutschland, in present day has declined over the last 3 decades from 3 down to about an average of 2. And now, under the current circumstances, they've been down at 1.7 for a month or two now. Iran, uh, demand destruction for a different reason because of actual destruction inside the country. They're normally at about 1.8 in present day. Initially, during the war, during the heaviest part of the bombing, because no one was going anywhere or doing anything, the economy just dead stopped. They dropped as low as only 700,000. They have since then bounced back up to like 1.1, I think, maybe 1.2, but still like 30 to 40% down from their normal usual average. And Mexico has recovered. They had one of the slowest COVID recoveries in terms of oil demand, back up over 1.8 only most recently. Uh, they had hit 1.86 million barrels per day just before everything started. Now apparently they're down at 1.64. So part of that would be fluctuation, but probably at least 100,000 of that is also like actual demand destruction. France, normally present day is like 1.6. Currently, they're down at 1.3, although they do fluctuate down a bit under 1.5 sometimes. So you probably only count like 200,000 of that as demand destruction. UK is usually at 1.5. They're also down somewhere between 1.3 and 1.4. Uh, Turkey is usually at 1.3. As of last seen, as of the end of last month, they were down at 1.1. Thailand is usually at 1.2. They're down under 1 at the moment. Singapore has declined from their peak of 1.4 down to 1.2. However, most recently, which was the middle of last month, They were down to 900,000. Australia is usually around or halfway between 1.1 and 1.2, and they were down to a flat one most recently. Let me check everybody. Okay. Italy normally at 1.3, Spain normally at 1.3. Neither of them have given real updates. I'm only going to be able to get their data for March when the delayed data releases in a few days. But they're both usually at 1.3. Iraq in present day has grown up to averaging about 1. However, at the moment they're closer down to 800,000. Who else is here? Egypt. Egypt was close to averaging a million. They were starting to roughly average about 950. At the moment, it looks like they're down between 650 and 700 because of the current situation, as they do not, most Egyptians do not have a huge, wide wallet to just swallow price increases with. The Netherlands had declined down naturally down to about 900. And as of current, they're down from that because of the current situation at about 800. Back over here to Taiwan, who has declined down to about 850 normally. And under the current circumstances, trying to reduce as much as they can, they're actually down around 700, or at least that's where they were around the end of last month. Oh, wait, forgot. I have to go down here to Malaysia. Malaysia averages in the 800,000s in present day, so roughly 850. And as of most recently, around the end of last month, they were down around 700. Argentina in present day is up into the 700s, and pre-war at least, they were closer to 800. Most recently, though, they were back down at around 700. Again, the degree of how much might just be fluctuations versus how much is actual demand destruction can vary from one to another. I don't have any way of like telling you exactly how much is what. Polska is right up to about 800 normally, and most recently they were back down to about 700. Decent part probably because of the current situation. Vietnam in present day, usually up to roughly around 750, is currently, or at least as of the middle of last month, down to 550. Also down to 550 is Nigeria, who was up to averaging domestic consumption of about 700,000 barrels per day, but they're down to about 550 at the moment. Who comes after them? Belgium is in present day has declined down over the last 2 decades from 700 to about 600, and they have not given any recent data uh, from the post-war time frame. Kazakhstan in present day is up to averaging roughly in the 500s. They have not given effective data since the war started. Who's after them? Colombia. Or actually, hold on, let me check these others just to make sure no one else was above them. Okay, roughly in the same range. All right, Colombia is up to averaging usually a bit over 500, like in the 510s, 20s, 30s, 40s, and in present day. However, post Iran situation price shocks, they dropped back down to 400. South Africa is has a wider fluctuation range, but is in present day, typically between 500 and 600,000 barrels per day of consumption. Their numbers from just before the war were 570. Their most recent numbers apparently were 420. So they went down a bit, or a decent bit. Who else is on here? Ah, uh, Pakistan was back up a bit above 500 by a few tens of thousands, and they're apparently down to around 400. The Philippines was over 500 just before the war. They actually hit a new high of a bit above 530,000. As of most recently, from just a few weeks ago, they were down to 375, forcibly trying to conserve as much as they can. Already said and showed Algeria in present day is usually around 500,000, and they have not given post war consumption data yet. Okay, then don't worry, we're eventually going to start touching on countries you don't usually see in the monthly update. Chile has plateaued in present day roughly around 400,000 barrels per day. No post war data. Ecuador and Peru are both now usually right around 300,000 barrels per day. Neither has seemingly given actual post war data other than like the first week or two, in which the shock did not really hit them. Over here, Kuwait is normally around 400,000 for domestic consumption. Qatar is usually around like 360 or 370. Neither have given really hard data since everything started. The UAE, before the war started, was at 1.2 million for domestic consumption. Uh, since the war began, they've dropped down to and have been staying between only 500 and 600,000. Uh, all the all the super Emirates airlines and all the rich people playground stuff and all the everything else is kind of down and out at the moment. Who comes next? Morocco in present day is usually a bit above 300,000. Most recently, they'd been around like 310 and 320. No post-war data as of yet. Uh, Sweden in present day, usually around 300. No post-war data as of yet. Excuse me, I said to stop. Greece, Hellas, usually around 300 in present day. No post-war data as of yet, it seems. Let's see. Bangladesh had one of the biggest falls percentage-wise in present day before the war started. They were usually around 300,000. And since they're on the one of the lowest ends of the bidding war totem pole to get oil shipments in the midst of all this, they have dropped by half of their consumption down to about 150. Let me check to see if there's any other 300s that I misplaced somewhere on this sheet of paper. It does not look like it. All right, back over here again. Venezuela is usually now is down to only around 250 on average. They have not given recent consumption data for months. Their last data was like in November. But before the country imploded in the late 2010s, they were at like 700 in terms of domestic consumption. But most recently, in the last few years, they've been around 250. Romania is usually around 250 in present day. No post war data yet. Portugal is normally around 250 in present day. Let's see who's coming after them. Was there anybody else in between? Yes. Oman in present day is usually around 220,000 under normal circumstances. They're most likely lower now, just like all the other Gulf nations. Or technically, they're outside the Gulf, but still, they have not given recent domestic consumption data, though. And Israel is also actually right on the same range, usually at 220. I have not been able to find post-war start consumption data for them, though. And then there's quite a lengthy list of countries who average right around 200. Most of them are in Europe. Uh, Austria, Österreich, Switzerland, Switzerland, Swiss, Czech Republic, Česko, Hungary, Magyarország, or Magyarország. Who else is on there? Norway, who's off screen. Norway, Finland, or Sumi. And then Libya down in North Africa. All those usually average around 200,000. No post-war data as of yet. And is there anybody else? It does not look like it above those levels that I will be missing. Okay, so time to go below those levels. New Zealand, you finally get to exist again. New Zealand in present day averages about 180,000, and no post-war data as of yet. Then, let's see, we head back up to Europe, and we have Ireland with an average of about 160 in present day, no post-war data. Denmark averages about 150 in present day, no post-war data. Rarely ever publishing data at all, like typically only once a year. The Dominican Republic in present day is up to usually averaging about 150,000 as well. But like I said, they publish so infrequently. So likely never going to actually see specifically how much they dropped like during these conditions. I'll just get the whole year average when they update things annually next year. Panama is domestically about 60,000, on paper 150, but 90 of that 150 is ships refueling, deciding to do a bunkering refueling session before or after passing through the canal. They don't count in Panama's case towards the domestic consumption because they're not ships that are related to Panama's like economic consumption. They're not bringing things specifically into and then out of Panama. But technically, canal included, Panama is about 150. Turkmenistan was up to about 170, and I don't know if something happened domestically or if this is because of the war, but they're down to, that's a really bad 150. Uh, they are down to 150,000. Azerbaijan is up to, in present day, about 140,000 of domestic consumption. No post-war data available yet. Uh, Uzbekistan is also up to about 140,000 barrels per day of domestic consumption. No post-war data available. Also at 140 is Angola. Also, no post-war data available yet, at least. Let's see. Then we start going down to 130. It looks like there's only one 130 member. Burma or Myanmar is normally at 130. However, under the current circumstances, they are down under 100. They're like around 80 or 90 or something, but I can't get a specific number out of them. Oops, no, that's not what I meant to do. Go here. Hold on. Who? I need to find someone I know I wrote down, but I forgot where I wrote them. Let me just make sure it still exists. There they are. Okay. Syria in present day, lower than it was before the Civil War, obviously, but going back upwards, they, as of the start of this year, were at about 120,000. And then we go through, looks like we start going through the other 120s. Okay. So Kenya averages about 120,000 barrels per day of consumption, would actually be 130,000 if not for the popularity of Spiro electric bikes, or technically electric motorcycles in this case. Uh, Across Africa overall, they have displaced or avoided about 40,000 barrels per day of gasoline demand. Or, in other words, if the people who got Spiro bikes had gotten actual like gasoline vehicles, whether motorcycles, mopeds, etc., then Africa's oil demand, particularly in this case from gasoline, would be about 40,000 barrels demand higher. They are up to averaging about 120 in present day, and they're one of the ones that's kind of low on the receiving list on the bidding items poll. So if they end up with severe disruptions, you could see some availability issues with some products worldwide, particularly like flowers, bouquet flowers and stuff that you draw at you buy at the store, etc. A lot of those are grown in Kenya. It's a whole industry. A lot of reflector vests, construction worker vests, and safety vests are made in Kenya. A lot are also made in Bangladesh and China, but a decent portion are actually made in Kenya, to the surprise of some. Over here, Ghana, as I learned, they do not emphasize it. Like we're used to other cultures and languages like actually sounding out vowels correctly and like putting emphasis on stuff, the opposite of what English does. So a lot of people, we usually assume it's Ghana, but from all the Ghanaian people, as they're called, pronouncing it, it's apparently they do not put that heavy-handed emphasis on it. It's a mix of gun and gan, as in like the an from can. So it's just Ghana. Ghana averages about 120 in present day, uh, and would be a few thousand higher, like 4,000 maybe higher, if not for electric bikes slash motorcycles. And they supply themselves, so that's okay. Their neighbor Cote d'Ivoire averages about 90, and they just barely supply themselves, although they do have to export elsewhere for it to be refined and then sent back to them. So there is quite a bit of a chocolate supply issue that's causing, which now has me paying $5.30 for a Rittersport bar. Uh, okay, then Belarus is usually around 120 in present day. Back when their economy actually existed, and just as like a country, they were kind of still alive. They were more around like 200, sometimes up to 250. But since they are nationally dead and also economically dead, they're down at 120. Correspondingly, obviously, I think that's the last one of those. Nope, there's one more 120 averager. Guatemala averages 120 in present day, at least as of this year. They would be pretty low on the bidding poll, along with their neighbor Honduras, obviously. but Mexico and actually the U.S. as well will probably continually bail them out. We'll also probably bail out Honduras as well because we do a lot of our cheap stuff nearby technically comes from them. Just next door, Cuba averaged about 110, but now averages zero because they've been blockaded from all imports to cause them to go into full blackout, which they've been in for like a month and a half now, which has caused national collapse across the board and now has us and them actually meeting face to face. And they've kind of already acquiesced and said that they'll cut the ties with Russia and China, and they'll open up to, or as Trump's going to phrase it, to make himself sound cool to boomers who grew up in the Cold War. They're going to end communism, even though it basically doesn't exist anymore. But that's for Trump's publicity's sake. So he's eventually going to get to make some big speech in a few months about how he ended communism in Cuba. But they've approached us now with like full acquiescence to any terms. They're like their full proposition is they'll do anything, they'll switch anything, as long as they, the people currently in power, in control of the government, get to stay in their positions of power. They'll change the economic system. They'll they'll cut ties with whatever nations we ask, as long as they themselves do not get removed from power. They just want to stay in power and continue receiving the benefits of power, even if the benefits get like kind of restricted a little bit. But they used to be 110. For the moment, they're at zero. And then we have a bunch of 100s. Bolivia, for one, averages about 100,000 barrels a day in present day. And they would come in, along with Paraguay, pretty far at the bottom of the bidding war. But Brazil and Argentina will just keep supplying them anyways, obviously, because no one except Israel apparently actually wants failed states next to them. That tends to be something that is not appealing. Sometimes, apparently, to some governments, it actually is, but in their case, it isn't. We go back over here. Jordan, my favorite country in the Arabian portion of the Middle East, averages about a flat 100,000 barrels per day of consumption, no post war data. Most of these guys have no post war data. Who's after them? Lebanon also averages about 100. And then Tunisia also averages about 100. Anybody else on the 100 list? Oh, no, sorry. Lebanon averages about 110. Uh, who else is on the list? Bulgaria. Bulgaria also averages about 100. And then next door, Serbia averages about 90,000. Then if you go up a little bit to Slovakia or Slovensko, they average about 90,000 barrels a day. Cote d'Ivoire, I already mentioned, averages about 90. Serbia. Go down to Sri Lanka, who averages about 90, and they've been under heavy rationing. Although India won't let them completely run out of stuff, even if they have to pay extra to import extra to then give to them. But Sri Lanka is down at like 60 or 70 or something. But normally they would be at 90. Anybody else normally at 90? It does not look like it. Okay, then 80. Tanzania is normally at 80,000, and they're pretty low on the bidding war totem pole. So they're, if things continue as is, going to be in for harsher supply constraints. There's not a lot of like global product exports that you would have to about, except, oh, wait, coffee. Sorry, I forgot. Tanzania grows a lot of coffee beans, not like a huge percentage, but they do grow a fair bit. So uh, get ready to go from paying $18 for your cup of Starbucks coffee to paying the actual full rounded up $20 for it, I guess. Who else is at 80? Honduras. Honduras averages about 80,000 in present day. That's a really bad eight, but I don't care. Anybody else outside the list that we need to go to? No. Oops. Looks like I misordered some stuff. You got Cambodia, who, Cambodia. Oh, no, we were going down to the 70s anyways. Cambodia averages about 70. No idea what they're at now post war. Senegal over on the west coast of Africa averages about 70, but they supply themselves now. So they should be okay. And I don't see any other 70s, so it looks like we're moving down to 60s. And just nearby, Mali has a demand level on average in present day of about 60. Nepal up in the Himalayas has an average demand level of about 60,000. Who else is in the 60s? Oh, one of the lowest spots on the bidding totem pole, Afghanistan, averages about 60, apparently. Anybody else at 60? I don't see anybody else at 60, so it looks like we're going down to 50. Mongolia averages about 50,000 in present day, but they're a large minerals and metals provider to the world at large, so China will not let them go under. They'll make sure they keep getting stuff. Uh, Paraguay, back down here, is averaging about 50,000 in present day. So is Uruguay, despite only having 1/3 of the population of Paraguay. Who else is at 50,000? Oops, we missed a 60. Costa Rica averages about 60,000 barrels per day. But okay, back to the 50s. Who are the other 50s? Slovenia. Slovenia averages about 50, and Croatia, or, oh, I don't know. How do you even say that? Hrvatska or something like that. I can't make that noise. Also averages around like 50. Don't ask me to make that noise, please. And then you drop down into the 40s. So who is only using 40? Go down here. Zimbabwe is only using about 40. They're unlikely to get bailed out by anybody. Botswana next door uses about 20. Uh, Probably unlikely to get bailed out if it comes down to it. So you would see a massive crash in the diamond supply worldwide. Next door, Namibia consumes about 25,000 barrels per day, but they're not going to get ditched. Supplies will keep being given to them because they already supply a fair amount of critical stuff. Oh, I forgot Ethiopia. Ethiopia averages about 100 in present day. They've actually declined back down from 120, as you know, doing an internal ethnic cleansing genocide thing and civil war stuff tends to not be good for your economy. Who else is at 40? Burkina Faso is at about 40,000 barrels per day for domestic consumption. Guinea over here is at about 30. They'll probably keep getting bailed out because they're a huge bauxite ore, aka aluminum ore supplier. Jamaica averages about 40,000 barrels per day. And Mozambique averages about only 40,000 barrels per day. Now, I don't see anybody else in the 30s, so I guess it's just down to the 20s, in which case the only ones I had written down are Madagascar, who usually averages only about 20,000 barrels a day, and they're already, Madagascar is already going dark. The power grid isn't down yet, but everybody's walking, basically. I think I forgot what the percentage was, but a huge percentage of the fuel stations in the country are just completely empty, and there ain't no refills of gasoline or diesel coming to anybody. Not because anyone's blockading them, but just because they're on like the lowest level of the bidding pyramid to get a hold of anything. And nope, nope, looks like that was all the ones that I actually had written down. So, uh, countries not mentioned probably are mostly ones that have like, a few tens of thousands of barrels per day of usual consumption. Most of the like island nations like the Maldives or Fiji are pretty negligible. They usually only have a demand level of like 5K. But now, after sitting here for an unnecessary amount of time, you have a broader idea other than just the usual 30 or 40 countries that make it into the monthly updates video. All the others get excluded primarily because I haven't made graphs for them yet, but also because a lot of the ones that don't make it into the video are usually ones that have consumption levels lower than 200, with the exception of some who just don't publish their data that frequently, like Morocco, South Korea, Pakistan, etc. Okay. All right. That's going to be it then, unless anybody else has anything. Or actually, let me look real quick just to see if anything else specifically happened. Blah, 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 blah. Nope. Okay. So nothing happened in the last 2 hours, and that was way longer than it should have been. So if nothing comes up from the few of you that are here, then I will just cut it and get back to doing push-ups like I should be doing. It looks like that's going to be it. So I'll see you guys around next time.